Good morning, everybody, and good morning, Singapore. It's a real pleasure to be here. And Bob, thank you very much for this wonderful introduction. I've had the pleasure to be involved with ISPE for, um, well, over 25 years, so longer than the Singapore affiliate. But I remember my first days when ISP representatives came to me and said, you're doing a lot of work as Europe in the GMP manufacturing area, and you need to involve us. And I said, engineers? Why would we involve engineers? I was a pharmacist. I still am a pharmacist. And luckily, I have learned a lot since then and learned a lot about how actually pharmaceutical engineering is key to how pharmaceutical production works. Please forgive my original ignorance, and I've learned to work very closely with ISP over the years, and indeed many of my colleagues at the European Medicines Agency continue to do so. Now, you also have to forgive me a little bit because even though I have a strong background in the manufacturing side, now I have got a much wider remit as Executive Director of the European Medicines Agency. So sometimes I might not be aware of all the technical details. So if you ask me very hard questions, I might have to call a friend. The reason why it's such a pleasure to be here is, and I really like the introduction that this conference is about, or the themes are about knowledge, communication, and innovation, because these are actually what makes the world happen from a regulatory and scientific perspective. And if you think about, I'm a strong advocate in good science that makes good medicines, but the main, they have to reach the patients. So this is one of the themes that I want to bring out in my presentation today. So I've always been an advocate for advanced manufacturing and translating innovation into advanced manufacturing. But it's not just done for the sake of innovation, and it's not just done for the sake of technology. It's done because this has to matter. It has to matter to patients. So in this short talk today, I will talk about what we're doing in the European Union to try and encourage manufacturing innovation for the benefit of patients. And it's actually a very exciting time at the moment. And I don't know if any of you feel, as I do, that sometimes manufacturing gets a back seat, and it's all about other aspects. It's about the clinical trials. It's about the incentives, but nothing happens unless you can actually manufacture the product. So it's great to see so many initiatives at the moment that recognize that and recognize the importance of manufacturing and innovation in the whole manufacturing area. So let me just first tell you a little bit about the European Medicines Agency. And as Bob said, I've had the honor of leading this agency since November 2020. And it was really a baptism of fire as executive director, because it was just before it was just after we saw the really fantastic results on the mRNA vaccines, but it was also the time when we had to really look at the data and make sure that we were confident that the products were safe, were of high quality, and were effective. So our mission is to foster scientific excellence in the evaluation and supervision of medicines for the benefit of public and animal health in the EU. We're responsible for medicines for human use and medicines for veterinary use. And as I mentioned before, the field we operate in at the moment is dynamic, fast-paced, and new discoveries are happening every day in the area of biology, artificial intelligence, machine learning, computer science, and we have to harness all this to realize the benefits. And I really feel we're at a stage now when we have the potential to transform medicines and bring new therapies for patients. So this is translated into our vision. Our vision at EMA is a fast path from innovation to safe and effective medicines. And we have many initiatives and pathways to support innovation across the medicine's life cycle. And I'll explain to you a little bit about how the ways we do this. One of the mantras that we work to is to try and enable innovation and ensure that the regulatory process for which we are responsible don't create barriers to safe and effective medicines reaching patients. But let me say, safe and effective is key. Now, what about the European Union? Well, every day we serve the needs of 450 million people through our network of 27 countries, 27 member states. And the EMA was set up in 1995, so it's our 30th year anniversary this year. And it was set up to bring together the expertise from, at the time, 15 member states. Because at the time, and it sounds 30 years ago, what were we looking at? We were looking at biotech, high tech as being the innovations. And we said, there's no point in developing expertise in every single country. Let's come together, bring this expertise together and create a network that can facilitate the review of these medicines. So we have 50 national competent authorities, even though we've got 27 member states, because it's human and veterinary, some of them are combined. So that's why we've got about 50 authorities. And we rely on a network of 4,000 experts, the brightest minds in science. And we work through 24 official languages. So it's not a very simple simple context, and sometimes we have to realize that making science work in this context is something that also gives us experience in how we can work greater from an international perspective. So we were set up to pool expertise and resources across member states. And this allows us to coordinate assessment and inspection work. It means that we have to create consistent standards and implement them in a consistent way. It allows us to share best practices and develop cooperative approaches. And it also allows for a very rapid communication on important safety issues, on quality defects, on recalls. So let me just talk a little bit about some of our EU initiatives and legislations that are specifically targeted at driving innovation to benefit patients. As I said, it's a very exciting time for us at the moment. It's our 30th anniversary, but we're just at a stage when there's a new pharmaceutical legislation which aims to look at to really revise all the pieces of legislation that have affected our agency since 1995. So it's really a once in a lifetime revision, and the way we were structured, we were set up first more or less as an experiment, and then it was an experiment that worked. So we kept on getting more and more tasks and more committees and more processes. And at some stage we had to look back and say, okay, well, how do we do this now in a revised environment where innovation is happening so quickly, where we've now gone from 15 to 27 member states, and we've gone from 2 committees to 7 committees. So how do we work more effectively? So there's always been a recognition that the EU needed a strategic and holistic approach to manufacturing, and that we had to bring together government, industry, education, and infrastructure. And the revised pharmaceutical legislation brings us some new possibilities that we didn't have in the previous legislation to facilitate innovation. For example, we have a concept now of regulatory sandboxes, where so we don't always have to fit in a new technology into a 30-year-old piece of legislation. We can try and understand better, and especially now when we're looking at the blurring of concepts between technology, products, so medicines and devices. We really need to have to look at it and see what works. We also have a possibility now to look more at platform technologies. So instead of looking at regulating each product on its own, is there a possibility to use a platform-based approach? And of course, leveraging the full power of artificial intelligence is another opportunity we need to take on. But the European Commission, so we work within a framework where we're the regulatory body, but our policy body is the European Commission, and the European Commission works across multiple sectors, not just in the pharmaceutical area. And last month, the European Commission published a new strategy for European life sciences, which has very similar goals in terms of facilitating innovation, and it's backed by over 10 billion euros annually. And this includes funding for clinical researchers as centres of excellence for ATMPs and an investment plan for multi-country clinical trials, but also support for basic research and innovation in cross-sectoral life science technologies. Because there's a strong realization that such products can drive industrial innovation and sustainability. And we want, part of this is also about improving the efficiency of biomanufacturing and supporting bioremediation. So in addition, there's another 200 million under the Horizon Europe framework, which will be funded between 2026 and 27. Now, let me tell you a little bit about another new piece of an important piece of legislative initiative, and this is the Critical Medicines Act. And this act was born out of a growing realization that medicines shortages are a challenge that we need to invest more in, and we need to figure out how we're going to address going forward. Now, we at the EMA have got many roles on managing the shortages of medicines, and increasingly tracking the products, creating databases, and we have a steering committee that looks at critical shortages, and we're required to set up a critical medicines list. But one of the areas where we don't have responsibility is in the area of funding and procurement. So this Critical Medicines Act provides for important coordination of procurement activities, which will help us as a European Union to be more agile in improving our manufacturing capacity in the area of critical medicines. We have, as European Medicines Agency, been given some important roles here. Our medicine shortages steering group can highlight potential weaknesses in the supply chain, and member states can designate strategic projects that are aimed to increase the manufacturing capacity of critical medicines. And within this framework, our Quality and Innovation Group within the European Medicines Agency is formally recognized as a facilitator of manufacturing innovation. So we will have to provide rapid regulatory and scientific support to manufacturers who have goals to increase the critical medicines. And the type of innovations here we're looking at are decentralized manufacturing, continuous manufacturing, artificial intelligence, platform technologies, and of course 3D manufacturing. Now, another increasing trend we're seeing in the EU is a strong focus on environmental sustainability. And we're getting more and more requests for advice, so scientific advice or support by our quality innovation group. And we provide one-to-one advice to medicines developers in this area, particularly in approaches to support greener manufacturing and testing approaches. And we've had some recent concrete examples now in the replacement of some of the fluoride gases and the rabbit pyrogen assay. So we're actively supporting applicants in their efforts to implement greener manufacturing and testing approaches. And we see that some of the innovations that are probably more at an early stage of development really can not only be more sustainable, but actually be lower cost as well. But of course, they're going to have to meet the same standards of any product. Now, our Quality Innovation Group has made environmental sustainability a priority topic for 2026. So watch this space and see what initiatives are going on here. And if you're a developer who are seeking EU funding for green and sustainable manufacturing, please reach out to the agency, because we will help you ensure that you can still meet the requirements set by the legislation. Okay, so then moving on to some other upcoming legislation. The EU Biotech Act is under discussion at the moment. We're currently at what we call the impact assessment stage. And it's another policy measure that seeks to create a coherent framework for innovation in the EU. It's expected to be published in 2026. And it aims to address the challenges faced by innovative companies, particularly small and medium-sized enterprises, in bridging the gap from ideation of biotech products to market launch. And again, we have a role here in providing the regulatory support, because often when they're at the innovation stage, there's not so much thinking about the regulatory needs, and some of the innovation doesn't actually translate into products. So our goal is to make sure if there is an important innovation, how can we translate into a product that will actually meet the patient needs. And one of the goals here is to provide predictability and also reduce the time to successfully launch these products. Now, if we look specifically at the support tools available at the European Medicines Agency, we have lots of ways where we support manufacturing innovation through our interactions with developers. And this could be through our scientific advice processes. We also have an innovation task force. So if you have ideas that you want to discuss with us, this is free of charge. Come to talk to us, and we'll try and work out. If there isn't an established regulatory framework, we'll try and work out what's needed to make it happen. And then, of course, the Quality Innovation Group that I've mentioned several times now. The idea here is that this group will provide end-to-end product support for technology through the life cycle of the product. And part of this too is about us learning from industry. We need to learn what industry is working on and what they need. And we therefore need to know very early on what the new developments are. It's not that we're necessarily experts there, but we need to see how we fit those into the regulatory environment, and how together, if needed, we help make them working. We help make them happen. And we deal with everything from very large pharma companies to startups. We have liaisons with academia, with small and medium-sized enterprises. We reach out to biotech hubs to make sure that they know if the end goal is a medicinal product, that we need to help them in this way. Our experts are well, I guess we're there to help explain the rules of the game, but we're also there to think outside the box and see how we can safely enable innovative approaches. And then maybe just lastly to mention the EU Biotech and Biomanufacturing Hub. This is not within the EMA, but it's a European Union concept. It's there particularly for startups and small and medium-sized enterprises, and it offers easy and accessible information on all the relevant EU legislation, but also on financing opportunities and business support networks. So a few words more then on innovation. How are we enabling innovative manufacturing in the EU? So let me talk briefly about platform technologies, how we use prior knowledge and decentralized manufacturing. So first of all, the main route for us to help you or help industry is our scientific advice process. And that allows us to help in the development of many innovative approaches, such as platform technologies. We already have had some accelerated experience, shall I say, during the pandemic, where we did have to look at platforms in the area of mRNA technologies, in the area of and in the area of ATMP. And what we're trying to do now is to standardize and optimize the regulatory frameworks so that they're fit for purpose. And we're creating now a framework for legislation which will help guide the applicants. So to help us make sure that this framework is fit for purpose, we've been interacting with industry, with academia and developers, looking at case studies, trying to outline the scientific challenges and then the data required to support the proposed platform. Now, the Quality Innovation Group held a Listen and Learn focus group in November 2024 on platform technologies, and you can find the report published on our website. We will also support the implementation going forward. And maybe finally, just to say, we're seeing an increasing use of decentralized manufacturing. Another way we can help transform how medicines reach patients is by helping to facilitate when the manufacturer is closer to them. So there are several projects testing the potential of decentralized manufacturing, portable on-demand production units, which can be transported wherever there is a need. And these don't classically fit into our regulatory framework. So how do we facilitate those? Moving on, I think there is no way these days you can do a presentation without the mention of artificial intelligence. And so yes, of course, we're working on artificial intelligence in many, many ways to support our own processes, to support the regulatory system, but also to see how we can regulate how AI is being used in manufacturing. So we've yet to see the full impact in the manufacturing side, but we're doing a lot of work with companies who are working on digital twins, and very, very exciting because the digital equivalent of a process can get data from the process and help us to anticipate the real life actions. So why is this a benefit? Why is this a benefit to patients? Well, it can shorten the development of a medicine, it can save time, And any process improvements that save time for manufacturers also ultimately save time for patients. And again, it's the Quality Innovation Group where all this work is happening. We've worked with developers using digital twins to optimize vaccine production and also ATMP manufacturing. So we've been able to support the use of digital twins to increase yields and purity in cell countries, and also to optimize ATMP manufacturing. Now, I just want to mention the 80 Path, which is one of the projects funded by our Horizon Europe, our research funding. And this is about developing adaptive manufacturing to address donor variability in advanced therapies. And this is a consortium that uses AI and process automation to allow a personalized, decentralized production of CAR T therapy in hospitals across the EU. And at the moment, this is at the research stage, but we're developing the platform to support these CAR T cells for cancer patients. And our role here is to provide regulatory advice to ensure that it can reach the patients. So it helps, what we're trying to do is make sure that the patient-related data and the biomarkers can get integrated into the therapy process. And of course, the CAR T cells are produced close to the patients, and it will make it possible to tailor the needs. Now, a quick mention of what we're doing formally to outline our approaches on AI. We have a suite of guidance, of GMP guidance in the EU, and at the moment we are preparing new GMP guidance, Annex 22, which will focus on using AI in manufacturing, and we expect this by the end of the year. And this established the requirement for AI and machine learning, and there will be an opportunity, of course, for comment by stakeholders. So I think my final message is on international collaboration, and just to say that we are absolutely committed to international collaboration. Bob mentioned the MRAs with Australia way back in the early 90s. I've been involved in ICH again since the early 90s. But since then, of course, a lot of things have changed, but we've learned and are absolutely committed to having strong relationships with other regulators, particularly around manufacturing and inspection processes. So as we have a lot of experience in collaboration within Europe, we use our experience in collaboration beyond Europe. We work closely with bilateral, with individual countries, but also multilaterally with organizations like PICS. I have the honor of chairing the International Coalition of Medicines Regulatory Authorities at the moment, the ICMRA, and this is a voluntary coalition of heads of global regulators. And we work, of course, with WHO as well. I'm particularly excited about some of the work we've been doing in the post-approval space in the ICMRA area. This is under the framework of the Product Quality Knowledge Management System. And we've launched 2 pilots, one on post-approval changes, where we've had 14 proposals in total, and we've so far been able to work on 6 applications, and we've been able to achieve 88% consensus on technical questions, and to approve the variation in multiple countries within 120-day timeline. The second one I want to mention is a pilot on collaborative and hybrid inspections that allow multiple regulators to participate in a single inspection, either on-site or remotely, and come to one joint regulatory decision, which is about using our international inspection resources more effectively. So far in this pilot, we've seen that we've had a consensus on inspection findings and compliance, and we've been able to agree on the corrective and prevention action plans and post-approval information inquests. So I think what we're seeing is some of the ideas of international collaboration are moving really into tangible activities, and it's about using our regulatory resources most effectively, but also about fostering convergence of regulatory thinking for new manufacturing and supply models. So if I have to summarize, innovation cycles are changing. We must move at the same pace as innovation, and I think we're doing that. As international regulators, we have to be on the same page, and we must ensure that our requirements don't create bottlenecks. They have to create consistency and predictability and ensure that the products are safe, quality, and effective. But we need to ensure that together we provide the certainty that the regulated industry needs to innovate. I hope I've given you a little bit of an insight into the sort of support that we can provide in Europe to new developments to ensure that patients really see the benefits of innovation. Supporting manufacturing innovation is vital for patients worldwide, and I really believe that international knowledge sharing and regulatory convergence are key. Thank you very much.